I mean, when Pastor Levi revealed that we're going to plant a campus in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, my initial thought from a logical perspective was that doesn't make any sense. Jackson Hole is kind of off in the mountains. There's not even a sign for Jackson Hole on the I-15. You kind of have to like go off the beaten path. Then you get out there and there's not very many people there, and it's kind of hard to get to. And it was very, very expensive. And so from a logical perspective, as you're putting all these things together, in my mind, I was like, this just doesn't make any sense. I remember Pastor Levi had called me, and it was on a Monday afternoon. He called me, hey, I need you to go to Jackson. And I was like, okay. And it was like, if you could just go and for like the next few months build team, and then in January we launch, and then, you know, you guys come back home. And I was like, okay, so like, you know, what are you thinking time-wise? And he's like, well, can you be there on Wednesday? And I was like, oh gosh, can we shoot for Thursday, you know? And so I was like, all right. Funny thing is, we gave to Blood and Thunder to support the launch of the Jackson Hole campus, having no idea that we would be the ones who would be entrusted to build it. So yeah, here's this, you know, this dude comes to church, shaggiest hair in the whole world, young 20s, and he was the very first person to give his life, give his heart to God in our Jackson Hole ministry.
Rad said in his earlier years that, you know, he wasn't really going down the right path when he moved out here to Jackson, and ended up meeting Kevin, and Kevin really assisted Rad in starting to change his life for the great, because Rad was already good.
And Rad would be involved every once in a while. You know, he'd pop in, and then, you know, we wouldn't see him for a while. But then I remember clear as day at one point where Rad showed up, and it was like something had switched in his mind, where he now is going to take a hold of that decision that he had made. You could see this distinct change in who he was and his priorities and the things that he cared about and the things that he was sowing into, and the ripple effect of that in the church was pretty huge.
Like the biggest thing that just always stands out to me about him was how willing he was to associate and befriend and get really close with people that you wouldn't expect him to do that with. I kind of put myself in that camp. Rad and I were very different people. He was this jovial, gregarious, socially outgoing, fun-loving guy, and I was always a bit perplexed even why he wanted to befriend me, because I was just so different from a lot of those things. I just loved him so much for that. You know, there just haven't been a ton of people come into my life that said, I'm gonna befriend you whether you like it or not. It felt unconditional, and that is pretty rare.
I remember it was Super Bowl Sunday, and there was a group of guys that we were gonna get together to just watch the game. Handful of us. Rad was one of the guys that was gonna come. And the thing about Rad, he's always got something going on. Like there's always something happening. And so in his mind, he was gonna do a quick ski trip in the mountains and then pop down and, you know, head over to the Super Bowl game. And Super Bowl game is going, and man, where's Rad at? He's still not here. And halfway through, it's like, okay, he's probably not coming, you know, and then the game ends and we all go home. And I remember that night, I got a call from Savannah Lucas, who is one of the members of our team, and she called, and her voice sounded very off. and she couldn't get words out. And then she kind of started panicking, and then she said, "Rad's dead."
Tonight, a man from Jackson is dead after an accident in a remote part of the backcountry in Grand Teton National Park. A call came in yesterday afternoon that a skier, later identified as Radcliffe Spencer, had fallen while skiing in the Apocalypse Couloir in the Death Canyon area. The rangers from the park and members of the Teton County, Wyoming search and rescue team responded and used a helicopter to reach Spencer's location. He was pronounced dead and his remains were recovered.
Rad's success in life was, sorry about this. Rad's success in life was that he cared more about you than anything.
Back in February, I went through a really rough breakup, and I think the day after it happened, I told Rad about it. He hears about this via text message, and he's like, "I'm gonna come over and we're gonna go to lunch. We're doing this." I'm like, "Dude, don't." I told him, I was like, I don't want to be around anyone right now. I can't deal with being around people at all right now. He walks into my office and just sits down in like the chair next to me. And I don't know, I'm like on the phone and I see him like walk in and sit down. And I'm just like, "What are you doing here?" Like, he's like, "We're going." It was absolutely the best thing that I needed. He listened with such empathy that I just don't know that many people do when they listen to someone. He made me feel like I was the number one guy in his world, and it meant absolutely everything to me. I'm never gonna forget that. And it was days. It was only days before he was in his accident.
So our ministry in the Tetons in Jackson Hole is comprised with a pretty large group of people, a big demographic of people. You have people who live on one side of the Tetons, which is the Jackson Hole side. And then you have people who live on the other side of the Tetons, which is the Teton Valley side. But the communities are very integrated, really connected to each other. However, they're separated by the steepest mountain pass in the United States of America. During the COVID season, I wanted to be able to provide a place for people in Teton Valley to be able to gather together. At the time, there was this old theater that was for sale in downtown Victor, which is just on the other side of the pass. And really started praying about, God, how could we get into this theater?
Well, I met Kevin Guido after Rad Spencer was killed in a skiing accident. And I had known Rad because I'm in real estate. Exactly a week before he passed away, he sent me a text and had invited me to come to church. And I said, "Oh, cool, you go to church there?" And he said, "Yeah, your name came up," and Kevin Guido said, "Does anybody know Ann Fish, I guess?" And he said, I shot my hand up and I said, "I know Ann." And so that was on a Sunday. And the next Sunday, I believe, was Super Bowl Sunday. And that's when he had his accident. And I can't remember. I think I called Kevin the next day, not that day. And it was a tough phone call, but I just said, I had been really thinking about it that night and thinking about Rad. And I was just like, wow, maybe I'm meant to talk to this guy.
And so at one point, she reached out to me and she told me, I don't know if this is what I want to do. I don't know if this is what I want to use the theater for. But given that that was the very last thing Rad asked me to do, I feel like that I need to honor that. And so let's talk. and let's see what that could look like.
I do just think God may have wanted me to meet the Guidos. I don't understand, none of us understands why certain things happen in our lives, but I do believe that there was a reason that I was involved, that I owned the theater when Fresh Life needed a place. The vision for the community and my vision statement is Pierre's can be a community gathering spot for culture, entertainment, and joy. And that's one reason that Fresh Life fit in that, because of the joy. And I may not ever know that anything happened in that seat right there. But if I can have a tiny part in that, maybe that gives me joy.
Gave my life to Christ 2 weeks before I came to Fresh Life. I already had plans to move out here. I was on a lot of drugs when I came here, and I came here to get sober. Pastor Kevin and Elena genuinely took on a spiritual parent's role in my life. They were people I could go to about anything. And when I had moved out here, my stepmom was withering away from cancer, and my dad had just died. I had lost my whole heart, my whole soul. But they took on that role, and I have like church grandmas. As far as I'm concerned, Karen's my real grandma. I mean, she's just incredible, and the people that I've had feeding into my life from this church, I have this whole family that wants to talk about Jesus, which is the one thing I don't have in my family. God's gotten me sober. God's saved me from so many incredible things. At the end of the day, God saved me before this church, but I think this church in turn ended up saving my life because of the way God was moving through it and through the people that He put in my life.
Yes, we're called the Party House by the church. We're the Party House.
And we have been in this house for 2 years and 9 months. We're kind of the grandparents of the group. We're both, well, no, we're not. We used to be 75 each. Now she's older. I married an older woman. She's 76.
One little story, if I can, of the kind of church we are. Geez, Ron, how long ago? I had shoulder surgery, and I had a pulmonary embolism. And so I was in ICU, and it happened to be on Sunday.
I think there were 12 of them in that ICU room.
And they let them in, was the miraculous
yeah, they just kept
thing.
letting them in and letting them in. And yeah, it was pretty special. And that probably does say something about the church.
I moved here, gosh, a little over 4 years ago, completely by myself. I mean, my daughter and we left our family in Missoula. I was actually in a long-term relationship for 9 years. We ended our 9-year relationship. 5 months later, I lost one of my best friends to suicide. 2 weeks later, I lost my teaching job. And I'm like, all right, God, you got my attention. I probably applied to 50 jobs. And so I did this phone interview in Jackson. And once they learned that I spoke Spanish, they put me on hold, and then they came back and hired me on the spot. But come to find out later, they don't do that. It is so hard to get into this district. And so the fact that they hired me on a phone interview on the spot is nothing short of miraculous, really. I knew that's where God wanted me, was here. Since Fresh Life is such a family to me, it's really cool to be able to like have that group around you all the time, where you're, you know, like going out to dinner with your friends, or going mountain biking with your friends, or skiing. We backcountry ski a lot together. And so it's like just being able to talk about God and like bounce things off of each other while we're doing fun things like that. Whereas I didn't really have that in Missoula. It's definitely been a huge support system for me.
When we started going to Fresh Life, Kevin and Elena invited us to Thanksgiving, and we had barely known them.
I thought that maybe like it was gonna be something, yeah, out of my comfort zone, not really sure what the conversations were gonna go like. We just hung out, and it was just like friends that also believe in God and, I don't know, believe in the same things.
Yeah. I think from the beginning, the invitation was, we're here, like our life is in this valley. We're not necessarily asking you to come be a part of our church, we're just asking you to come be a part of our life, because that's how the church is meant to function. You know, it is much more about the meals that we have together than it is about, you know, the hour and a half on Sunday mornings, which was, yeah, I think new for both of us and encouraging.
Every year we as a church, we have the opportunity to be able to give above and beyond our tithes, what the Bible would call an offering, to expansion. So this is the ability for us, hey, we have dreams, we have things that we want to see God do. The only way that we're going to get there is if we give toward expansion. And there's just something significant, something special about sharing the same table together. When you look around and all of a sudden you see all of the stories, all of the different people whose lives had been completely turned upside down. I want to fit as many people at that table as I possibly can. What could I do? What can we do to help create a space for more people to be welcomed in?